Hello and welcome back to Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, which Craig Touch and myself, Roland Hume, chat some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry we're in of writing and self-publishing. And today we are delighted to have a returning guest, chap who gave us so much wisdom last time we were chatting to him. Steve Pieper, a best-selling author and expert in marketing and training for authors. Steve, thank you so much for rejoining us. How are you doing today?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's a great privilege to be back with you guys. Appreciate it.
Oh, well, we are really, really excited to talk to you. And we're specifically going to be talking to you today about mindset. And it's something that you threw out there for the authors that you work with that really resonated with me. And I think it's really important. And I begged Craig to let us do a podcast about it. And of course, we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Roland. And thanks for coming back on, Steve. We had you back. Well, we had you on originally, I think, in September last year. And, at that point, we were talking to you about direct sales and how authors can, sort of find that different avenue to sell their books directly to their fans without having to go through, some of the other storefronts or in conjunction with, there's just different ways to earn money. So, but this time, as Roland said, there's this idea of mindset that you talk about in your course. And that is something that's really important for a lot of authors. Roland and I have worked with authors as well who have, sometimes, especially when you're struggling and you're trying to, figure things out on your own, you can get discouraged. You can, start going in the wrong direction, whatever it is. And it derails you. And if you have the right mindset in terms of what you're doing and how you're approaching things, if you have your head straight on all that, then it can really help guide you in the right direction. So, you have a lot of that. You have some good things to say about that. So we wanted to talk to you about that today. So why don't you, give us a quick recap of who you are and how you got here, and then we can dive into it.
Yeah, thank you. So I was flying around the country doing a bunch of meetings, maybe 12 or 13 or 14 years ago. And I decided I probably also wanted to stop writing for corporations and start writing the thrillers that I had always wanted to write. And so I did that, and it turned out people liked them okay. I sold some books, did the Amazon things, and had some success on Amazon. Got a nasty gram from Amazon one day saying, "We're mad at you. We won't tell you why we're mad at you. And we're so mad, we're not going to pay you about half your royalties this month." And so I said, I clicked reply and took a deep breath and said all the curse words out loud so I didn't have to say them, typed them in the email. And I was like, "Hey, very sorry. Can you tell me what's going on?" I got the response like 49 milliseconds later that said, "We've reviewed your case and we've upheld our decision. You should be really careful with what you do." And of course, I hadn't touched anything in my ad account for weeks. I had no clue what was happening. But that was a wake-up moment for me that if out of the blue they could get mad at me, not tell me why, not offer to speak with me human to human, but just autoresponders, I needed to do something else. I couldn't really trust my entire career just to this company, right? Whatever else they are, they're a big company, and this is sort of how you have to manage things when you are a big company. You lose the ability to talk to individuals. So I said, well, I've been doing business things for a long time online. What if I just tried to sell directly to my readers without going around or going through Amazon and the other retailers? My idea at the time was I would just replace them completely. But I didn't pull the plug on them while I was getting the direct sales system set up and dialed in and tested and optimized to make it work. But what I noticed along the way is that as I did this, first of all, direct sales started making me significantly more money than just selling via the retailers did. But also, due to this nerdy thing called cross-channel effects, I was making more money via the retailers than I had really ever made before. So that combination of things led me to believe, hey, I'm onto something here. And I was, and ended up selling a ton of books over the next couple of years. Also, I sort of distilled what I had learned when I put that process together into a program called Author Marketing Mastery Through Optimization. Opened the doors, I suppose that's probably 7 years ago now, maybe. And so we've helped a ton of authors do the same thing, sort of de-risk their author career by offering a direct channel that they can reach and sell directly to their readers. And so that's what occupies most of my time right now, is helping out the authors inside of our author training program.
And that's I took your course recently, and one of the things that you included in it, which I found really, really valuable and completely unexpected, was this bonus segment that you did about mindset. And I have ADHD and the attention span of a squirrel. So normally I just I listen to all your segments at 1.75 speed. So you sound like a chipmunk, but that's how I can trick my brain into paying attention. But there was this segment on mindset, and I had it on in the background. I was doing something else, and I kept stopping and listening to it. I was like, this is really valuable, because you do this segment about how you need to get your head straight, basically. And it really resonated with me, because as I've dipped my toes in the beginning into advertising and started to build things out, I kept cutting the legs out from under myself. But if I had a bad week of advertising, I'd be like, this isn't working. I've got to pull the plug, cut it out, and start all over again. And I just did all these different stop, start. It would not go according to plan, and I'd give up. And then there'd be other things like purchasing your course. I procrastinated probably 2 years on that. And then when I actually did it, I was like, I could have done this 2 years ago, but no, because I didn't have my mindset straight. So I thought maybe some of the people listening to this would find it really interesting and beneficial to listen to your thoughts on mindset, and how, as an author, as you struggle with a very different marketplace right now, a very challenging marketplace, how you can get your head straight and stay the course, even when things aren't always going according to plan.
Yeah, thank you for that. I had always sort of envisioned the program as, we want to learn how to sell more books, but underneath that, like you say, is a fundamental approach that will either allow you and enable you to succeed, or will completely prevent you from developing what otherwise could have been a really brilliant career. And that's the way you approach things. And I think the fundamental issue that people who become authors and want to do it on a professional level, what we face is that being an author is actually a way of being an entrepreneur. And that sounds like a sexy word. People think of the world's, the Steve Jobs of the world, and the Jeff Bezos and the Elon Musks and jets and rocket ships and all of the things. But that's a very, very tiny subset of entrepreneurs. And mostly what entrepreneurship means is struggle, difficulty. And even though there are 60 million books available 24/7, 365 right now, and there are 129 million in human history or whatever, you're still kind of blazing your own trail, because you're telling the story, the monomyth, in a new way, and you're finding your voice, and you're finding your connection, the way that you can connect with readers in your market. So there's no real, while lots of people are doing work, it's not like a college program where you just matriculate through the program and at the end you've achieved the objective. You can't just sort of follow along in the stream, because the way entrepreneurship works is it's extremely up and down. There are really high highs and there are really low lows. And in a day job, in a corporate setting, or if you work at a store, or whatever you've done, trading hours for time in the past, and most of us, I think, have had jobs like that. Many of us, especially most authors, like 55, I believe, is the first average age of the first time a person publishes a book. Many of us have had an entire lifetime in this really controlled environment where the officers of the corporation hide the sheer terror and panic they feel every month when they're trying to make payroll from the people who work there. And if you work there, it's just calm. There's the elevator music. Your paycheck shows up on Friday or whenever. And it's not like that when you're an author and an entrepreneur. There are, like you say, you turn your ads on and it's great for a couple of days, and then next day it's Armageddon. And so if you turn your ads off and walk away during that Armageddon day, and 3 weeks later, or 3 days later, or 3 months later, you come back, you have lost all of that ground that you would otherwise have gained. And here's the thing. You still have more of that in front of you, more of this incredible whipsaw, this whiplash of, gosh, yesterday was amazing. I made so much money, but today it's not amazing. Today I'm losing money. I wonder if I can get my day job back. I wonder if I can call my boss and ask him, hey, can I just come back in, can I do part-time work for you or something? And maybe I'm completely delusional that this whole thing will ever work anyway. Or maybe today is the day that the market finally falls off a cliff and AI has replaced authors for like whatever. Your mind does that to you. And it's because there's not a predictable, steady result that comes from predictable, steady effort. There's nothing but this whipsaw, and it never goes away. I have a friend who his agency spends $800 million a year on advertising. And he says, it doesn't matter if you're spending $1,000 a day or $1 million a day on ads, the feeling is the same. And it's this emotional roller coaster that leads us to make irrational decisions. And it's like when your kid comes home from school angry about something, fire and brimstone, and you're like, okay, let's take a breath and step back. Is it really all this bad? There's nobody telling you to do that when you feel like Meta is personally out to get you. Facebook ads today, they are mad at you specifically. And you're not getting any purchasers today. We're keeping all the purchasers. They're going to go to your competitors' books, not yours today. And it feels like that. And you then make career decisions or career impacting decisions in and because of an uncomfortable emotional state. So the game is this continuous give and take, I think, between the emotional highs when you feel like everything's going to be great. I can do no wrong. Everything's going perfectly well. And then it might be 4 hours later when there's this ridiculous low. You get a bad email, or you get, some customer is angry at you for whatever reason. And it feels like you have no business even attempting this. It just feels like you are completely out of your mind for trying to build an author career. So that's the biggest danger to an author's career, is making career decisions on momentary emotional states. And the longer I'm in business, the more I realize this never goes away. It never goes away. Like I say, if you're advertising on $50 a day, or I recently pushed up the throttle on a campaign, or at 100K a month, and in that first few days of the campaign finding its legs, that's white knuckle time. Like you're refreshing that thing. You know better. I know better, but it's still, my hands are refreshing the browser. What am I doing this for, right? That feeling never goes away. So it really is important to develop a skill set around stepping away and allowing the emotion to pass, and then re-engaging from a place of integrity. Just do the work rationally and unemotionally. And it sounds simple and obvious, and people have heard it all their lives, but until you experience it over and over again, it's not real to you. It's just an idea, right? And it's quite shocking when you have this experience repeatedly and you think, I'm on top of the world, and oh no, everything is terrible and I need to get my day job back. So it's just hard.
I think, Craig, you can probably relate to that Like Craig and I met when we both were running ARC businesses and sort of moved on. And it was one of those things. It's like one day it's, oh my God, this is amazing. I've got these people throwing money at me. And the next day it's like, what? So.
Yeah. And I mean, even back when I was writing, and I know from working with writers, it's the same sort of thing where, like you're saying, I always say that it's not even that being a self-published author is like running a business. I say it is a business. You are the business, right? You are every step of that business. You have to create the content, you have to package it, you have to sell it, you have to market it, you have to step in all those roles. And so it completely makes sense that at any point along that path, not just because you got bad ad results, but anything could derail your brain and make you think this was a terrible decision. And really, I mean, it depends too on what stage of things you are. I think it's more dangerous at the beginning, maybe before you've had any kind of success, because then a bad day before you've had a lot of good days or any good days might derail you even faster, because you might be like, okay, yeah, this was a really bad decision, and then you run off. Whereas if you've had a ton of success, it probably inoculates you a little bit, but I think you're still going to end up second guessing things. And I mean, and like you said, Roland, I get that now running the business. There's lots of times where I'm just like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. I've been doing it for 10 years and I still don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think it ever goes away. I try to listen a lot to mentors ahead of me in the process, in the game, in entrepreneurship, and none of them has ever said, in my hearing anyway, either personally or publicly, it gets easier the farther you go. It doesn't, I don't think. I think you have the same problems at larger magnitude, and you have new ones in addition to those same ones that have carried along. Like you say, you're creating the product and you're testing the product. Ideally, you're not testing the product. Please test it. It's so much better when your customers actually want the thing you're trying to sell. It's night and day different. If you've ever done both, I'm sad to say I've done both, and it's really hard to sell stuff to people that they don't want. So
yeah.
Testing your product, that's key. But then, and that's the part that we all love and focus on, but there's so much more to running any business, and particularly business in a really competitive industry like publishing. And you have to be a professional about how you approach it. There has to be some discipline and some ritual around the daily activities so that you continue to move yourself forward on the business front, which is putting products in front of readers and making offers to see if they're happy to read your books. It's taking on feedback from reader reviews. It's taking on feedback from how your ads are performing and how your books are selling, folding that back into the product creation process. But if you're derailed by the emotional roller coaster, you don't advance. And you tend to neglect entire areas of your business for months at a time. And it really is fatal to do that, unfortunately.
Now, one of the things that I really liked is you had a very practical way to approach this. I mean, when we're talking about it like this, mindset and things, it all sounds very esoteric. And you provide this idea called a jailbreak and then mental parole. And it's kind of an operation. And I think to a certain extent, when you explain it, it might sound a bit airy-fairy. It might sound like that the SNL skit where the guy was looking in the mirror going like, damn, you're popular. You're a good guy. Damn it, you're going to succeed. But it kind of works. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of how you, I don't know, you don't want to give away the everything, but like how you can approach that in a way that is like practical and tangible and actionable.
Well, I think what I've noticed in every breakthrough that I have made in my professional lives over the years and the different careers that I've had, certainly in entrepreneurship and especially in entrepreneurship, also every breakthrough that I've made in my personal relationships has always been preceded by a breakthrough between my ears. So I notice this repeatedly. I catch myself in this maybe weekly now because I have learned how to watch for it. But we all have hidden assumptions that we don't know we have. And these hidden assumptions color the questions that we ask. They limit the things that we can think of to grow our business. They limit what we believe is actually possible. And most of all, the hidden assumption that all of us carry is a story of who and what we are. And this story always contains a boundary of our capability. So we have circumscribed our own lives in a very tangible way. And there are certain things that we believe not to be within our capability. And the kicker is those things which we currently and secretly believe not to be in our capability are the things that we must do if we're ever going to achieve our goals as an author or an entrepreneur. So there's a number of different ways that you can get at this, but the really important thing is to develop the ability to watch your own thoughts and ask yourself, what's the perspective that is producing that thought? And a great way to think about this is if you're trying to get a sense of, if you're in a city and you're trying to get a sense of the layout, it's a new city to you, you don't know where you are or really where you're going, you can find certain places in the city that are higher up. So you have a higher vantage point and you can see more of the city. And you can change that vantage point around the city until you see what you need to see. So the information is there if you're standing in the right place to see it, number one. Number two, if you're looking for the right things. So there's a vantage point and there's a filter. So vantage point is, from what perspective am I looking at this? In other words, what this person just said was crazy, except I don't think the person is crazy. So from what vantage point does it make sense that a not crazy person would say a thing that sounds crazy to me? Let me back up and retrace their steps. Let me follow their trajectory. Oh, they had 30 years in corporate America. They were the victim of a certain crime or a certain something that happened to them. It fosters certain belief. And this belief this belief produces a certain way of thinking. And it's not until you can understand the perspective that you can actually understand the thought process behind the confusing thing that you're seeing. I'm sure that sounds a little bit esoteric, but getting in the right vantage point so you can see more clearly the situation in front of you is hugely important. It's absolutely critical. And the second thing is, once you're in that vantage point, the cognitive filter that you use is really important. If you're standing in the right place mentally to understand something, but you have a belief about yourself that would prevent you from digging into the details that would let you understand it, you're never going to get there. So those two things are really important. From what perspective does this make the most sense? And what's the filter? So one of the most important observations that I've had is that we form a portion of our identity around the problems that our business is experiencing. So one example is, my list of paying customers is pretty small. But that translates to, I'm small time. I'm small. I'm not worthy of more paying customers. Or if my advertisements are losing money, that can become, I don't know how to advertise properly. So what we do is we internalize external things and we take them on as a portion of our identity related to these perceived shortcomings. We believe below the conscious level that we're not the kind of person who can learn how to advertise profitably, or You're not the kind of person who can keep track of your book finances. And so then in the future, when a choice presents itself that may allow us to unlock really substantial growth in the future, instead, we avoid doing the work to take advantage of that opportunity in favor of remaining small and ineffectual, because that's what we believe that we are, because that's the way we interpret the results that our business is currently producing. So it's really hard to move forward in a way that's going to allow you to really grow when you don't believe it's something that you are innately capable of doing successfully. And to hear it presented like that, most people say, no, you're crazy. That's not actually how I think. Once you start watching this happen inside your own head, you're like, holy smokes, I'm doing it. I'm doing that thing that's actually keeping me small. It's keeping me from, maybe it's not even taking a risk. Maybe it's just like opening up the spreadsheet and learning how to use it, that kind of thing. And these small shying away episodes, like our hero, like the call to action in the hero's journey, it's facing us 50 times a day in these little hidden areas that we're avoiding because we've developed an identity that says I'm not a numbers person, or I don't like advertising, or I don't like business, or I don't like editing, or I don't like genre strictures, or whatever that thing is. We habitually hide from it because we tacitly believe we're the kind of person who needs to hide from it. And so this is really insidious, and it's really hard to see it operating, but once you do, you can't unsee it in a particular area. But you have to discover it in all of these different little areas, but it's the same problem that happens over and over again. Our mind is always trying to determine the story of us. Like, what's the story of me? What's the container that I'm in that defines me from the rest of the world? And usually this produces huge limitations in what we're able to achieve, because we'll just not do the work because we believe we're not capable of doing it successfully.
When I was growing up, I grew up on a farm. We rode horses, and I rode Western because I wanted to be a cowboy. And one of the things about these horses is when they were little baby foals, I guess, they would hammer the reins into the ground, and so they couldn't pull away because they were just little tiny baby horses, and they couldn't do that. And as the horses got older, they stopped hammering the reins into the ground and just let the rein fall onto the ground. And the horse would think that it was tied there, even though it wasn't. And it was a mental thing, and the horse could just wander off anytime it wanted, but it didn't, because it thought it was attached to the ground. And that's kind of, to me, that's kind of what happens here. You have in your head, like, I don't know how to advertise, and then you don't know how to advertise, and that's your thing. Like, I don't know how to advertise, so you don't do anything about it.
And it's there at every level. Maybe you're at the point where you're growing a team, or maybe you're at the point when you should be growing a team, but you're not, because you have the belief that nobody can do it as well as I can, or you have the belief that I don't like leading people, or I don't like being responsible for people, or I don't want to be responsible for their livelihood, to pay them. All of these things, like, that's an example that you'll run into later on down the road, but you will run into them, and they almost always will point back to some misconception about your ability to grow into a new role or to develop a new set of skills. So once you've made that legible, you can turn it around. I'll never learn how to advertise becomes I'm learning how to advertise by advertising, right? That's how we do it. You can read a book on it and you'll have a bunch of theoretical knowledge, but it's not until you're in the ring and you're bloody and muddy and sweaty, that's when you learn how to do the thing. But you never let yourself get into the ring unless and until you recognize that you've tied your own reins to the fence. It's a Carrie Roland's metaphor for it.
One of the things that I loved about it is you worked out how to reframe it so it's just a nudge. Because like I'm super into the law of attraction and stuff, and it's like, oh, what you think is going to be what's real. So if you don't know how to advertise and you're thinking, I don't know how to advertise, you could write affirmations like, I'm the world's best advertiser. But in your head, you know that's not true. And so if you know it's not true, you're not going to believe it. If you're not going to believe it, it can't possibly become true. Whereas you just give it a nudge. It's like going from, I don't know how to advertise to, I'm learning how to advertise. And it's like, yeah, and I'm learning how to become a good advertiser, because that's true. And once you believe that, because you can see it and it is a true statement, then you can believe it and embrace it and just expand that little bit more.
Yeah, it's an accumulation of a bunch of small learnings, and it only happens over time. It's like I used to, before my arthritis got out of control a little bit, I used to hike the 14ers here in Colorado. It's a long hike. You know, it takes lots of elevation change, and sometimes it's 6-8 miles going from 9,000 feet to 14,000 feet. It's legitimately challenging. Not for some athletes, but for most humans, it's legitimately challenging. And when you get to the trailhead, you can't even see the top of the mountain. But when you're driving to the trailhead, you see this peak looming above you, and you think it's not possible for any person to get up to the top of that thing, much less me. But you get out of the car because your friend's with you and you don't want to embarrass yourself in front of your friend, and you put your water backpack on and you just start taking steps. And you start taking steps. You notice you're out of breath and you're sweating, but you're still taking steps. And at some moment, you turn around and look behind you and you realize, oh, I'm actually climbing this mountain. We've actually climbed a couple thousand feet already. I didn't think it was possible, but it's one step at a time. And this sort of points to one of the most annoying things about life, which is that every really meaningful pearl of wisdom that I've discovered the hard way over the years is summarized in a cliche. Like, step by step, right? How do you get up the mountain? Step by step. How do you learn how to advertise? Step by step. And so the fear of the thing is so much worse than the thing itself, because you don't have to leap up to the top of the silly mountain. You just are taking small steps along the way. Yes, it's effort. Yes, you have to be smart. You have to pick the right route. You have to make good choices. You need help. You need a map. You need a guide. You need all the things that'll keep you from killing yourself on the mountain. But it's just doing the work. And if you can get out of your own way by making legible the limitations that you've hidden from yourself and are hiding from yourself, that's really the first step, is to believe that it's a thing that you can do, and to really just trust the process of learning, which is a piecemeal, bit by bit, fits and starts. And the key always and forever is consistency. But the only way you can be consistent is if you can get control of the monster between your ears that's telling you all these crazy things. So yeah, it's one of these weird paradoxes where the answer is absolutely stupid simple and hard at the same time.
I think for a lot of people, it's probably that fear of failure as well, right? They don't, even though, they know that they don't necessarily have those skills yet, and they think that if they try, they're probably going to fail, but that's okay, right? I mean, there's some things in life where you don't want to fail that first time, but I think writing and publishing and advertising isn't one of them. You can fail, you can pick yourself back up and try again, because that's what we learn from. We learn more from our failures than from our successes. And I think, but for a lot of people, it's that perfectionism, where that maybe it's the sense of pride, like it's going to hurt your ego if you fail, right? But that's probably what's getting in their way in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the interesting ironic twists about the difference between life and school is that if you pay attention, most people can score 95% or better on most of the tests that we encounter in school. So we're really accustomed to getting most of the answers, by a really large majority, most of the answers right. But out in the world, out in life, it's completely the reverse. So we worked with a ton of authors, but more than that, also a ton of entrepreneurs, like founders of startups, small business owners, venture-backed, bootstrapped, 75 different industries. And what we noticed is that only 10% of them know already, when they start working with us, what their customers actually want. What words, what ideas. 90% don't know. And then when we start doing the specific testing, we make folks think of not just one or two ideas, but a dozen, and include those ones that you don't think or have any prayer of resonating with your market, because only 5% of your ideas on average are worth anything to your market. The other 95% of your ideas, your market could not care less about. So it's this weird inversion of results. And I think it's hardest for high achievers, because and lots of authors are really smart people and really high achieving people. And if school wasn't your thing, something else was probably your thing, in the past. And when you're accustomed to achieving we're accustomed really just to running faster than the person next to us in the same pipeline, but we're not accustomed to a situation when we get the wrong answer 95% of the time. So part of reframing your identity around the results that you're getting is to gain a better understanding of what game you're actually playing. You're not playing, if you're trying to learn how to sell your book, you're not playing how do I get an A in chemistry class game, where they give you all the answers in advance and your job is to memorize and understand and then memorize them. In this game, you have almost none of the answers in advance. You don't know what specific ideas and what specific words you need to use. And in 95% of cases, you're wrong. Like one idea out of 20 is a winner. But once you understand that, you can go, oh, it's not just me. Like, this is the actual nature of the game. This is the way stuff works. Like, there are two businesses that bring in the lion's share of Amazon's earnings. They're one of the most profitable companies in the history of humanity. Amazon Prime and Amazon Web Services. Those are the only two businesses that really matter in the Amazon universe. But they have really tested, hired people to run and to really give it the college try, hundreds of business ideas, hundreds of them. And these two are the two that have made Jeff Bezos one of the richest men of all time. So knowing the landscape that you're trying to navigate can go a really long way toward letting yourself off the hook and not believing that you're not having instant overnight success just because you tried hard for a short period of time, not because you're not worthy of it, or not because you don't deserve it, or because there's a fundamental flaw in your character that is just now being revealed to you. It's none of that stuff. It's just you're playing a different game now. The odds are completely upside down from what you used to.
So what's the rule they say for entrepreneurs is to fail fast. It's like 95% of the things you do are going to fail. So do those 95 things as fast as possible, and you'll get to the ones that succeed.
Yeah, and literally, so the way that we do our testing for book marketing and for our product development is that happens literally overnight. We set up tests where we test a dozen ideas, and sometimes you're done in a day. Often it's within 2 days. So right away that you shouldn't spend 6 months writing this book because your people don't care about it. They don't want it. But that other thing that you also liked, that other idea that you kind of fancied but didn't think anybody else would like, they actually like that a lot. So you should go do that.
And sometimes that's the more fun idea. Sometimes that's the one you're more passionate about, and you're like, you wouldn't have followed it because you thought no one's interested, and suddenly they are, and you're like, ooh, I get to do the thing that I wanted to do because people actually want it.
It is uncanny how many times you'll dream up your dozen or so test ideas, and you'll have one or two that you thought of, but you thought there's no way that I feel weird even trying this. Like, I don't know about all of this, but you have to do it. It's uncanny how many times that's the one that your people love the most. It's the one that you thought was too far outside the box or too far outside the norm. But when you run that test, they tell you, no, you're onto something here. This is new. This is different. And we like it. But you would never know that if you didn't have the courage to get outside of your own comfort zone a little bit, to test new ideas before you test them the easy way and the cheap way before you spend 6 months turning them into a book. And now you're forever trying to put lipstick on that pig and turn it into a unicorn. And it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
I worked. That's probably why, right? That's probably why they were successful in the first place, because people weren't doing them before. They were so far outside the box. That's what we've talked about this before, where the big publishing companies now, they're not doing so well. And what we've seen is when self-publishing started, publishers or self-publishers, authors, were willing to try genres that the traditional publishers never would buy, and they found a market for them. And that's because they took that chance that the big publishers just were unwilling to take.
Yeah, we have a few authors in our author program who kind of invented their genre, and it's really, really interesting. The first time I met him, I was like, "You write what?" Yeah, it's kind of this is kind of that. I'm like, and it works. Yeah, it's gangbusters, but that never would have been bought by a trad pub house, I don't think. And here it's an entire genre now. Lots of other authors are doing well and earning well in those genres, but they didn't exist, or probably subgenres, but they wouldn't have existed if somebody wasn't willing to really take a risk and just go for something that felt really right to them.
And I think, the things that we like that we think no one will. I'm super into James Bond, and I've got my little. Craig always rolls his eyes when I do this because I probably mention James Bond every single day. But I got my little group of friends on the internet who are all into James Bond, and it's weird because I would have thought there is nobody who's sad enough to sit there and listen to the soundtrack of Live and Let Die in the background while they're doing something from this obscure old movie. And it's like, no, there are a whole bunch of people who do that. And when you meet them and you talk to them, it's like, oh my God, I finally found somebody who does the sad little thing that I do. And then and that's the same with your book ideas, I guess. You come up with something that you feel passionate about, and there is going to be somebody out there, maybe only one or two people who it really resonates with.
Yeah, I think it's more common for those slightly outlandish ideas to resonate with people who are firmly in the mainstream, just because they're in the mainstream and they're kind of bored of the mainstream. They're like, oh, this is a really interesting twist on that. I'm actually going to check this out because it's got this and this, and I like that. I'm going to go check this out. So it's not as cockamamie as you think. You definitely, I don't think you want to write your books for that one reader in a million who's likely to read them. You really want to know that there's a decent bedrock, a foundation of humans who are likely to want to read what you're writing. But I think we really limit what we believe to be possible for book ideas that resonate or work. Same
That's
idea.
Self-limiting beliefs again.
Yeah, we built our own cage and don't really realize it.
So we are approaching the top of the hour, so I guess we ought to start wrapping things up. But I was going to say, if there are people out there who are, working as self-published authors, they want to be successful, they keep coming up against limitations. Do you have some quick and dirty tips to give them to maybe help them get their mindset in order?
Yeah, I think the most important thing in any entrepreneurial pursuit, any career that takes years, not months to build, it is consistent daily effort. And if I approach my consistent daily effort as a newbie, even though I've been around for a while, I find that I have more enthusiasm, more curiosity. I have greater ability to learn. I can get more high quality work done when I approach it from the standpoint of I should already have this figured out. I should be farther along than I am. It's really hard. I don't know if I'm good enough for all of this. In other words, when you are evaluating where you currently are and comparing it to where you think you want to go, that's almost never motivational. That's almost always depressing. But if you go, I'm just going to have fun doing this work today. That ideally, writing is that thing that you do that you can't not do. So if you do it because you love it, you're really liable to do enough of it to get good enough at it and to produce a big enough body of professional caliber work to really make something. I mean, to really have a beautiful career. But at that point, it almost that's almost the side benefit, because if you love the doing of the thing, you've lived a beautiful life along the way to this fleeting milestone of whatever dollar amount you want. So I think if you can love the work, love the process of creating the stories or the nonfiction titles, love the process of creating the business. If you treat it like your art, if you treat it like I'm building a business, but I want this to be a work of art. I'm obviously writing books, and if I'm a novelist, those are works of art as well. But I want them to be very high quality works of art. I want them to really reflect the best of my sensibilities. And so I think that kind of enjoyment and curiosity and openness in the process is the surest way to live a beautiful life along the way to whatever you think it is you want to accomplish. By the way, when you get there, you'd be like, I thought this was going to be good, but maybe another, maybe this next milestone, that's really when I get off the gas. So just know you're going to do that. No matter what milestone it is, you're going to blow right past it and look for the next one. But love the process of the doing. And I think that's really the secret weapon. If you only doing it as a transaction to get a certain result, you will almost assuredly not get that result. Or the burning, smoldering shambles that is what's left of your life when you finally get that result will prevent you from enjoying it. So love the process, I think, is a three-word summary.
Yeah, and not be so obsessed with the outcome. Because I think when I took your course, I deliberately said, okay, normally when I've done stuff in the past, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this course, and then I'm going to make double my money every time I advertise, and I'm going to be able to buy a big house in the Pocono Mountains and be absolutely fine. It's like, no, I'm going to focus on just proving to myself that I can sit down and control my ADHD squirrel brain and do the course and finish the course. And when I did, I was like, oh, look, I'm actually, in the black doing this. This is great. I have achieved the result that I wanted, but because I didn't have the pressure on it, I was able to enjoy the process and learn from it.
Beautiful.
So we are approaching the top of the hour. Craig, do you have any final questions for Steve?
No, I think I agree. Like that's one of those sayings where if you enjoy what you do, then you'll never work a day in your life, something like that. So yeah, you absolutely do. And I think as writers, there's so much more failure in writing than there is success, that most people hopefully are doing it because they love writing and not because they think they're going to become rich doing it, because most people aren't. And if you can even just make a living, you're way ahead of the curve, right?
Yeah.
So I hope that most of the people listening to this are already in that mindset of, I'm already doing what I love. Now let me just get the most out of it that I can. And I think that what you've talked about today is really what's going to get people there, is getting in that mindset and not letting themselves get in their own way. So thanks for coming on and talking us through all that.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
If somebody says, if you do what you love, you don't need to work a day in your life. It's like, no, that's not true. You'll end up working 7 days a week.
That's right.
Like 12 hours a day.
And then it's not work.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like work when you're doing it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, well, Steve, thank you so much. Now, before we wrap up, where can people find out more about you, find out more about what you do and everything like that? We'll obviously pop a link down below, but quickly give us the lowdown.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. It's moauthor.com, AMMO, author marketing mastery through optimization. And that's where we help folks produce better ads and produce better books. And all of that leads to more income, more stability, and more independence for authors.
That's wonderful. Well, we will obviously put a link down below in the description so you can go and check that out. But while you're scrolling down that, whether you're listening to this as a podcast, whether you're watching it on YouTube, there's a big comment section. Why don't you leave Steve a comment and let him know how much you appreciated all the wisdom that he shared with us today. And while you're down there, why don't you click that like button? And if you haven't already, that subscribe button, there's a little bell icon you can click on, so you will find out every time we have a brand new episode of Fully Booked, which we will do next week. So join us then for a brand new episode. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve, and we'll see you next week. Cheerio.